So I stumbled across a tier list, and I haven't done any of these in a minute, and it's actually kind of a cool one to talk about and discuss, and it is about failed NBA big threes. There's 10 of them here. They're all within the last, I guess, decade-ish, like since 2010. I think the one that goes the farthest back is the 2012, 2013 LA Lakers. I'm not sure if the person that created this was a Bulls fan, because we also have DeMar DeRozan, Vucevic, and Zach LaVine, which is an interesting choice, but maybe he couldn't think of any other ones, or she. So yeah, we're going to be ranking to these, these into 4 tiers I created. So we have injuries happen. This is just like, somebody got injured. Maybe it was a one-year thing, and it just didn't really work out. I don't even know if anybody's gonna even place into that tier, because we can also have not high expectations. Nobody really expected too much out of this team. Maybe it was quote unquote called a big three, but everyone's like, okay, yeah, like you're playing against LeBron in the Eastern Conference in 2012. You're not beating them, so we're not gonna have high expectations. Pretty disappointing. Pretty self-explanatory. We thought that you could at least be in that maybe conference final contention. You never made it there. And then the biggest flops ever. You flat out flopped. You had very high aspirations or high expectations to be one of the best big threes of all time, maybe, or at least in the league, and probably expected to win a championship. So yeah, drop a like if you guys do enjoy these videos. Let me know what you'd put down below if you agree or disagree. So I'm going to also just kind of recap. I have this in that exact order that I want to use it. Just going to recap what the big three put up in their individual stats in this tenure, how many years it was, and then what they ended up doing in the playoffs or the regular season as well. So we'll start off with Ben Simmons, Jimmy Butler, and Joel Embiid. I don't think this was known as like a big three, because also it's Tobias Harris as well. So you could even say that was a big four. But like going back and looking at some of these numbers, like Ben Simmons averaged 17, 9, and 8 this season. Embiid averaged 27, 13, and 4. And then Butler averaged 18, 5, and 4. He came over from Minnesota. He wanted out. Robert Covington, Sarge, and a couple other things went to Minnesota. Jimmy Butler only played probably 3/4. It was about 3/4 of the 2019 season with Philly. He left in the offseason to Miami, so this was the only year. They finished 3rd in the Eastern Conference with a 51-31 record. They beat D'Angelo Russell's Brooklyn Nets. That was a really fun team that ended up being a 6th seed. The Nets actually won game 1 of that, and then the Sixers ended up winning 4 in a row. And then in round 2, sorry Sixers fans, they lost to the Raptors in 7 on the infamous Kawhi Leonard bounce shot that went in to send them to the conference finals. So this one, I would say it's a little bit disappointing, just maybe the ending of it, because you had Embiid, Simmons, Butler, Harris, JJ Redick. It was a solid squad that I think people thought, okay, this could be an NBA Finals team. Now, trying to remember who was like up there seeding wise, was Toronto was I think the 2 seed or the 1 seed, and Milwaukee was up there because you also had Boston as well. I feel like I'm missing a seed. Yeah, I don't know why I thought that Boston Bucks series was round 1. That's when Paul Pierce came out, said the series over after I think Boston took game 1, and then after Boston took game 1, then the Bucks dominated. So yeah, I would say it was pretty disappointing. I would say they were probably, I don't know. I thought they were going to be, I don't know. That Toronto team was good. I'm going to say it was disappointing, yeah. Okay. The Melo, Russell Westbrook, Paul George one. Before I rank it, they played only 1 season together back in 2018. Paul George only played 2 years in OKC. But this was the first one. Russ averaged 25, 10, and 10 this season. He averaged a triple-double. I forget about that because this is coming off his triple-double the year prior in which he won MVP back in 2017. Paul George averaged 22, 6, and 5. Melo, 16, 6, and 1. It was only 1 season. Like I said, they finished 4th in the Western Conference at the end of the regular season with a 48-34 record. But they lost to Donovan Mitchell and the Utah Jazz, a rookie Donovan Mitchell, in round 1 in 6 games. That was really disappointing. I'm going to put it up there as well. It was pretty disappointing, man. I really thought that this team was going to at least flirt with the Western Conference Finals. I didn't think that they were better than the Golden State Warriors at the time, or this was the year that the Houston Rockets took the Warriors to 7 games. But I thought they were at least in that conversation. I'm losing in round 1. And this was Melo's last notable year. He spent time in LA and a little bit else in Portland too. But this was the last time Melo was looked at as a top maybe 40 guy in the league, 50 guy coming over from the Knicks. And yeah, it flopped. It was bad. It was really disappointing. All right, next up we have one that spent 3 years together. Brook Lopez, Joe Johnson, and Darren Williams, one of two Brooklyn Nets ones. So this was 3 seasons, like I said. Joe Johnson in those 3 years averaged 15 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. He was just not the same player he was in Atlanta before coming over to Brooklyn. And they just started. This was 2013, I believe, 2014 and 15 seasons. And 2013 was the first year they moved to Brooklyn. Darren Williams in those 3 seasons averaged 15, 7, and 3. Brook Lopez, 18, 7, and 4. In year 1, they went 49 and 33. They were the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference, but they lost to the Bulls in round 1 in 7 games. And a Bulls team that didn't even have Derrick Rose. It was led by Noah and Wall Deng and Jimmy Butler. Year 2, they went 44 and 38, so they were 5 games worse. They were a seed worse. They were the 5 seed. They beat the Raptors in 7 games in round 1, but then they lost to the Heatles in round 2 in 5 games. And then in year 3, they went 38 and 44. And this is how bad the Eastern Conference was. They made the playoffs with a 38 and 44 record as the 8 seed, but they lost to the Atlanta Hawks in 6. I don't even know, man. I didn't really have high expectations, but they made it seem like it was a big thing. I don't think anybody ever had them in front of the Heatles, like with Dwayne Wade, Bosh, and LeBron. They weren't even touching them. I believe in their first year, that was the year the Knicks were really good, and back in 2013 as well. The Pacers were really good at that time. The Bulls were starting to be something as well. I just don't think the expectations were really all that high. It was pretty meh. They paid a lot of the money to these guys, and then they also ended up a year after this, trading for Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, and Jesus, that was so bad. Or this was like towards the end of this tenure. I don't even want to talk about that. I feel bad for you Nets fans, but it might only get worse here. So the Brooklyn Nets are up here again. So yeah, we're going to be talking about the 2021 Brooklyn Nets. They played half of the 2022 season. Harden got traded, but I'm really not going to talk about that too much. But we'll briefly mention it. Kyrie in that basically season averaged 27, 6, and 4. KD averaged 36 and 7, and Harden, coming over from Houston, averaged 22, 10, and 8. They beat the Boston Celtics in round 1 in 5 games. I believe Jaylen Brown was hurt during that series. And then in round 2, they lost that amazing, that's one of the best series we've seen in a while, against the Milwaukee Bucks in 7 games. If Kevin Durant was a shoe size smaller, they probably would have won because his foot was on the line back there in game, I believe that was game 5 or game 6. That was game 6. Or no, maybe that was game 5. I don't really remember correctly. But yeah, this is probably one of the biggest flops ever, or at least of the 21st century, man. They played 18 games total together because Harden came over from Houston. He was dealing with his own things. Kyrie got hurt. KD got hurt. In the playoffs, Harden got hurt again. Kyrie was coming back from injury. KD was only the consistent guy towards the end of the season. And then last year, when they played the first half of the year, where everything was kind of blowing up for them, Kyrie wasn't vaccinated, so he couldn't play in some games. KD was dealing with some injuries as well, and it was a flop. You were really bringing together a top 7 guys at the time. KD was probably top 5. Harden was borderline top 5, and then Kyrie, another top 20 guy, onto that team that also had some solid role players around it. You ended up moving. You had to move Jared Allen, but Dinwiddie was hurt, but you had still Joe Harris, you had Nick Claxton. DeAndre Jordan really wasn't all that good at the time. But yeah, that Nets team is definitely one of the biggest flops, just the star power of those 3, and it's so fresh in our minds as well. Next up, we're talking about, it's probably one of the biggest flops, just because it didn't make it to the even Western Conference Finals once. So this is the Lob City Clips. They played 6 seasons together. Over those 6 years, Chris Paul averaged 19, 10, and 4. This is probably peak CP3. Blake Griffin, also peak Blake Griffin, 21, 9, and 7, and also peak DeAndre Jordan, who averaged 11, 12, and 1. In 2012, they went 40 and 26 in the lockout year. They were swept in round 2 by the Spurs. In year 2, in 2013, they went 56 and 26. They lost in round 1 to the Memphis Grizzlies in 6 games. That was the grit and grind Grizzlies. Year 3, 14. They went 57 and 25. They lost in round 2 to the Thunder in 6. Year 4, 56 and 26. They lost in round 2 to the Spurs in 7 games. That was a really good series looking back on it. Year 5, 2016, they went 53 and 29. They lost to the Trailblazers in 6 games in round 1. And then in 2017, they lost to Gordon Hayward and the Utah Jazz in 7 games in round 1 after going 51 and 31. Not making it to the conference finals once. Not once. They had that big 3. Now, they also had a bunch of injuries. It seems like Chris Paul or Blake Griffin got hurt almost every other playoff year for them, which was really disappointing. They also had a lot of veterans on that team. They had Jamal Crawford, Matt Barnes. I believe JJ Redick spent some time there. Paul Pierce maybe as well. But yeah, it was really disappointing. I think it is one of the biggest flops ever if we're looking at like overall big threes, at least for the 21st century or looking from 2010 on. I think this has to go in there. You spent 6 seasons together with one of the greatest point guards ever, one of the most athletic power forwards of this century, and an all-NBA caliber big man as well, DeAndre Jordan, and you couldn't make it to the Western Conference once. You had a NBA Finals winning head coach in Doc Rivers, and you couldn't make it once. It's definitely one of the biggest flops ever. Next up, we have the LA Lakers, who spent 1 season in 2013 with Kobe Bryant, Pau Gasol, and newly acquired from the Orlando Magic Dwight Howard in that trade. They ended up going 45-37. Kobe Bryant averaged 27 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Pau Gasol, 14 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, and Dwight, 17, 12 rebounds, which I believe led the NBA, and 1 assist. They got swept in round 1 by the San Antonio Spurs. That Spurs team went on to lose in the finals in 7 games to the Heat. It was a really good Spurs team. It's probably one of the biggest flops, even though it was just 1 season. I mean, this was a half a season I'm putting it in here. I think I'm going to still put the Clippers up there at 1 because not making it to a conference finals in 6 years is just horrible. But yeah, you had Kobe Bryant, Dwight Howard, Pau Gasol. You also acquired Steve Nash, but he was really towards the end of his career, and he was really hurt as well because he was nursing that back injury at the time, and he was just not healthy at all to really play in the NBA again. It didn't work out. Even though Pau Gasol was getting up there in age, you still had prime Kobe Bryant and basically still prime Dwight Howard towards the end of his prime days, and it didn't work out. You got swept in round 1. You won 45 games. It was very disappointing. It was one of the biggest flops of this era, of the Big 3 era. Next up, yeah, we got Jimmy Butler, Andrew Wiggins, and Karl-Anthony Towns. They only played 1 season together because Jimmy Butler was traded to Minnesota during the 2017 draft. He did play a couple games at the start of the 2019 season, as I mentioned earlier, with the Sixers Big 3, but I'm not really counting that. So their one main year, they ended up going 47-35. The Western Conference was really competitive because that was only the 8th seed. Wiggins averaged 18 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. Cat 21, 12, and 2. Jimmy 22, 5, and 5. I think the expectations weren't super high. It sucks that they were the 8th seed. They beat out I think it was Denver last game of the year. They lost to the Rockets in round 1, I think in 5 games. And yeah, the expectations weren't all that high. You would hope that Butler was going to lead that team though and be there for longer than 1 year and 2 months, but it didn't happen. He didn't I think just Tibbs' system there. He didn't like the immaturity of the young guys, at least he thought in his mind, and then he ended up getting traded to Philly. Next up, we have the current LA Lakers. I didn't think too much of this Big 3 at all. I hated the Rush trade when it happened. I was very vocal about that. So I don't think the expectations were that high, but I think just basing it off of 1 full season, I think they're going to at least make the play-in tournament this year. And Russ is, I don't know though. You know what? I'm going to put them in injuries happen. I was going to say pretty disappointing, but LeBron missed a lot of the 2022 season. So did Anthony Davis. Russ did not play well at all, and he's playing so much better this year in his 6th man role. But yeah, Russ wasn't good, and AD and LeBron were both hurt. When they were on the floor, LeBron was really good. AD was okay, not normal AD and what we saw from him this year, but he was still a good player. I'm going to put this in injuries happen because if LeBron and AD were healthy for 80% of the season, 75% of the season, they would have at least made the play-in tournament, and who knows what happens. They missed the playoffs with a 33-49 record. And then, yeah, we have 2 Bulls ones. We're counting Jimmy Butler, Dwayne Wade, and Rajon Rondo back in 2017, just for 1 season as a Big 3. They went 41-41. Jimmy averaged 24, 5, and 6, arguably his best Bulls season. Dwayne Wade, 18, 4, and 4. This was a shocker when he signed with them. And then Rondo averaged 8 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists. But yeah, like I said, they went 41-41, 8th in the Eastern Conference. They lost in 6 to the Celtics in round 1, but they were actually up 2-0 if you remember, and Rondo went off, and then he got hurt. So they ended up losing 4 straight to that Celtics team. I'm going to just say not that high expectations. I don't really think so. You could put this in injuries happen. Dwayne Wade getting older, Rondo got hurt in the playoffs, but I don't think it was that disappointing. It does suck they lost in round 1, but I don't think it's as disappointing as some of these. And then the current Bulls, I guess we're counting this as a Big 3. I'm surprised he didn't put another one in here, because this one is also currently still going on. Hell, you could have put Kristaps Porzingis, Luka, and Jalen Brunson. But yeah, here we go. We have DeMar, Vooch, and LaVine. I'm just counting last year's season at the moment. DeMar, we got MVP basically. DeMar, 28, 5, and 5. LaVine averaged 24, 4, and 4. Vooch coming over from Orlando, 18, 11, and 3. They started off the season really strong, then they kind of fizzled out. Injuries did happen to Lonzo and some others. They went 46 and 36. They lost in round 1 in 5 games to the Milwaukee Milwaukee Bucks. I just don't think the expectations were really all that high. I think it was fun to see the Bulls good again after not really making the playoffs for 5 or so years. So it was nice to see them back, but I don't think anybody was expecting them to beat Boston or Milwaukee or Miami or Philly. So yeah, that was really fun to do. Let me know if you guys enjoyed by dropping a thumbs up. If you find another tier list with other teams, I would love to rank some big threes. Like I said, like random ones like that, like Brunson, Luka, and KP, or Donovan Mitchell, Gobert, and Mike Conley or / Bogdanovich. Like those would be fun. But yeah, drop a like if you guys did enjoy, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.